For nearly 5 years, they told you the January 6th pipe bomber was a ghost, unsolvable. Then just last month, Blaze Media dropped a bombshell claiming the bomber was actually a female Capitol police officer named Shauna Ray Kirkhoff. Identified through gait analysis, Steve Baker staked his reputation on it, and now suddenly the FBI swoops in and arrests a completely different person, an alleged anarchist living in the Virginia suburbs. Well, tonight that bomber has a name, but some are asking, is Brian Cole Jr. the real bomber, or is he a patsy to bury the deeper story? So here's what's at stake, because for 5 years, the unsolved pipe bomb case was Exhibit A in the insurrection narrative. It justified surveillance, prosecutions, and labeling half of the country as domestic terrorists. Then Steve Baker and Blaze Media published their investigation claiming former Capitol Police Officer Shawnee Ray Kirkhoff matched the bomber's gait, build, and movements. That story sent shockwaves through conservative media. Now, weeks later, the FBI, under new leadership, arrests Brian Cole Jr., and the official story pivots overnight. So which is it? Did Trump's team crack the case the Biden DOJ buried for years, or did they just hand the establishment a convenient fall guy to protect the person that Baker identified? Yes, some online are already calling Cole a patsy. Others say Baker got it wrong, and this arrest vindicates the new FBI. Well, the truth matters, because if the wrong person's in custody, the real person, the real bomber, walks free and the cover-up continues. And as we wrap up 2025, it's a good time to slow down and reflect on the year. And there's one thing that we've all learned, it's that uncertainty isn't temporary, it's the world we live in now. Waiting for things to go back to normal isn't a plan, it's a gamble. And for over a decade, my friends at Noble Gold Investments have helped Americans protect themselves by diversifying their wealth with gold and silver. Now, nobody knows what 2026 will bring, okay? But one thing is for sure, real wealth isn't digital. It's physical, it's lasting, and it is yours. So make sure before the end of the year, you visit nextnewsgold.com and get your free wealth protection kit. That's nextnewsgold.com. Do not leave your future to chance. Or you can call that number on the screen, 877-646-5347, and find out how you can get 10 1-ounce silver holiday coins with qualified accounts. So where are we now? We are going to continue with this story. We have this. This is where it gets messier, because Brian Cole Jr. is being described as an anarchist, potentially tied to Antifa-style circles. His father reportedly runs an immigration bail bond company. Commentators are calling it a revolution as a rich man's game. But Steve Baker's defenders are not backing down. Some insist Baker was onto something deeper, and this arrest is designed to shut down the investigation before it went further. Others point out that Blaze Media now faces potential defamation exposure if Kirkhoff sues. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris, who was near the DNC bomb that night, she's silenced. The January 6th committee that spent $17 million, felt like years, not a word. Now, whether Cole's the real bomber or a convenient scapegoat, the establishment is scrambling to control the story. Now, here's what we have right now. This Luke Rosiak posting that the accused pipe bomber Brian Cole worked to get illegal immigrants out of ICE facilities and sued Trump's DHS D.C. Court of Appeals and ruled against him weeks before January 6th. Brian, I'm working on it. You don't need to do anything. Please. He later hired Trayvon Martin's attorney to call on Biden's DOJ to punish anti-black racism. The suspect arrested for the January 5th, 2021 pipe bombs outside the RNC worked for his father, bail bond company, statewide bonding.
Would be Mr. Brian Cole, the president of Free at Last Bail Bond Company, Mr. Cole?
Yes. I've done business all over the United States. I'm in 20 states.
Now, to be clear, the man speaking is the father. It is allegedly his son who is the one that has been arrested today. So I'm only presenting this to you just so you can understand.
I've never met the opposition that I've met with Zimmerman coming after our company the way he has. He's defamed me. He's called my insurance company.
Okay, so there you have. Okay, so this is, as the news broke about 8 hours ago, the FBI has a massive presence outside the home of the alleged D.C. pipe bomber Brian Cole Jr. in Woodbridge, Virginia. Can't wait to hear what the FBI has on him and how they zeroed in on him after all these years. So this
On
is some
Paul
of the
Morrow,
video.
arrested for suspected of planting pipe bombs outside of the RNC and DNC headquarters near the U.S. Capitol complex. It's been nearly 5 years ago that this happened. That's about 35 miles outside of D.C. where they are now. And I want to bring in on the phone Paul Morrow, former NYPD inspector.
Okay, so that's just an aerial shot of the news as it was happening. This is apparently a photo of the alleged. This appears to be 33-year-old Brian Cole Jr. from Woodbridge, Virginia, also known as Brian Jerome Cole. The social media page where this photo was originally found has now been taken down. And then, of course, we have this, another photo of Brian Cole Jr. You see what I mean? A lot of people are saying that he is just a patsy in this entire game. His father, Brian Cole Sr., owns an immigration bail bond company. Little Brian lives with his mom and dad. Public records and investigative reporting indicate Cole lives with his immediate family, including his father, Brian Cole Sr., owner of the bail bond company. Immigration bail bond, of all things. Cole Sr. declined to comment to media following the arrest. His mother, Delicia Cole, a real estate agent based in Woodbridge, Virginia, possible siblings. We won't go there. Of course, he and his daddy operated an immigration bail bond company. Pretty sure they won't be able to spin that either. Another deep state operation, occasionally known associated members of Antifa thugs. More of the aerial footage of the raid on the house 5 years later. This
Fox
is
5D helicopter right here. This is a very heavy police presence at the home of the suspect they have identified in the D.C. pipe bomb probe. So this is a live look from the Fox 5 DC helicopter. As you see in a cul-de-sac, the FBI now at the home of this suspect. And we were learning more earlier as we were hearing from the FBI after they announced that they made an arrest in the nearly 5-year-old investigation into who placed pipe bombs in Washington, D.C. before the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S.
Continuing right along here. Let's go on. Yes, the father, J6 pipe bomber father, reportedly Brian Cole Sr. And judging by his identity, Brian Cole Jr. will likely not fit the narrative the Democrats want to portray, so mainstream media will, of course, bury this story. Time will tell, but Cole Jr. has been described as an anarchist. That's another way of saying Antifa. That also explain why the Biden administration didn't do much to find the J6 pipe bomber. And it makes sense because if he was, in fact, a member of Antifa, an anarchist, and he was caught, they could not say it was some radical MAGA. So they just ignored it, let it go, and never investigated because their narrative would have fallen apart. Attorney General Pam Bondi announces that he'd been charged for both of the arrests. Listen.
And early this morning, Brian Cole Jr. was arrested and charged with placing the pipe bombs at the RNC and the DNC on January 5th, 2021. He has been charged with violating 18 U.S.C. 844, which is use of an explosive device. This investigation is ongoing. As we speak, search warrants are being executed, and there could be more charges to come. I'm going to let our U.S. attorney discuss that shortly. This was the work of multiple agencies working together. This morning's operation was carried out safely and successfully. Early this morning, Brian...
So apparently what they did was there was so much cell phone data that they had to pour through. And with all of that data, they were able to track down the specific types of materials that made up that bomb that were purchased at local hardware stores. And then they cross-referenced all the purchases of the same types of material. And they cross-referenced that with all the cell phone data for the same location where the purchases were made, along with the location data of when the individual was in the DC area and it pinged at the location where the pipe bombs were dropped. And then following that same ping, taking it to his home, and that's apparently how this whole thing came together, which is pretty remarkable. And continuing with more information that we have, announced that he has been arrested. Here's Kash Patel on that.
When you attack American citizens, when you attack our institutions of legislation, when you attack our nation's capital, you attack the very being of our way of life. And this FBI and this Department of Justice stand here to tell you that we will always refute it and combat it. We will provide the safest country the nation has ever seen under President Trump's leadership here. And that's what we did here today with great resolve on a case of massive public importance, as it should be. An individual who is now alleged to have placed multiple explosive devices to blow up multiple people and multiple officials, innocent civilians, is now arrested thanks to the brave men and women of the FBI and the interagency. I want to take a moment to thank the Metropolitan Police Department, the United States Capitol Police, our brave prosecutors, the Department of Justice, and our leader, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, whose relentless work on this case made this possible. As the Attorney General said, we did not discover any new information. What we did, an investigation spearheaded by the deputy director and the ADIC of our Washington field office, brought in a new team of investigators and experts, re-examined every piece of evidence, sifted through all the data, something that the prior administration refused and failed to do. As a result of that, we generated numerous investigative leads, executed multiple legal process with our U.S. attorney partners, and came to this conclusion today. And that is why we were able to safely secure this individual into custody. Remember, we are dealing with an individual who is alleged to have made bombs. We cannot do this sort of takedown in haste because it endangers the lives of law enforcement. And this FBI will never allow the lives of law enforcement and our prosecutors to be put in jeopardy.
Lots of information had to be sorted through to track down this individual, as I just explained. Let's see, more charges to come. Here's Tim Pool's take. He says, I too believe it's an inside job. The FBI has arrested a suspect in the January 6th pipe bomb case, but what happened to the female Capitol Police suspect named by Steve Baker of the Blaze, as well as others? Let's listen to Tim's take.
Prior to joining the Fox News says, the lingering mystery led a faction of President Donald Trump's base to raise concerns at the timing of the pipe bomb incidents and security failures surrounding it. Some elevated theories the Biden admin was not forthright to the public about the facts of the case. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino had suggested the planning of the bombs was an inside job prior to joining the Bureau. In May, he told Fox News authorities were closing in on the suspects. I'm going to go ahead and add, I too believe it's an inside job. So this image right here, some people have pointed out, looks like a training device that is typically used by law enforcement as a prop pipe bomb. And here we have an individual with one of these devices. It's very strange. We'll find out, I suppose. We have this report from NBC News. Apparently, they've given more details on the suspect. They say Brian Cole was identified as the suspect in custody, according to two senior law enforcement officials. The arrest marks a breakthrough in the case. They say the arrest happened Thursday morning. A news conference will take place at the DOJ on Thursday to officially announce the arrest, and I hope they give us the full details. Now, they're pointing out, in 2023, the FBI raised the reward for providing information that led to an arrest from $100,000 to $500,000. But many may be wondering, what about this other individual that was named by the Blaze, and Steve Baker as well as others, as being the principal suspect? Actually, you know what I should do is I'll pull up Steve Baker's X account, see if he's got a comment on this one.
He doesn't really.
Stephen Baker. There's too many Steve Bakers. Let's see if I can find his account. Because as many of you are aware, okay, we do have him right here. And let's see if he has a... No, he has a statement from yesterday that I'm gonna pull in right now before we read the story from CBS News. He said, in case you're wondering why there's been no action on our series of stories revealing knowledge and complicity by certain Capitol Police actors in the J6 pipe bomb conspiracy, they are being completely steamrolled by the Comey Ray zealots they promoted. Phil Kennedy says, from a current FBI agent, The propaganda is strong, especially for anyone who knows even a little about the FBI. The new leadership team is almost entirely Comey Ray acolytes. The only exceptions are outsiders like Ben Williamson, Marshall Yates, and Dan himself, who have no business being ADs or the DD. They are being completely steamrolled by the Comey and Ray zealots they've promoted. Interesting. And this comes following a statement from Dan Bongino, who says, some updates regarding important changes and reforms. He was going to mention a bunch of reforms and stuff not relevant to the news story at hand, and for which people believe the job isn't getting done. Now, CBS reported this about a week ago, and many people immediately called into question why. These reports came out that identified the pipe bomber as this Capitol Police woman. Now, I said at the time, it's not confirmed, and gait analysis is not the most reliable way to identify a suspect. That being said, I do believe this pipe bomber was female, based on not gait analysis, but watching the way the person walked, didn't look too much like a guy. If it did, it's a shorter, frail guy, I guess, with a lot of hip movement. But more importantly, leaning down to place the bombs was done at the hips. And I know, I've said it already, but I stand by that. Doesn't mean I know for sure, and certainly men can do this. So none of it is guaranteed. It just is, I think. If it turns out this guy is actually the person and they release real information, this is massive and will be one of the biggest stories of our generation. Fox News.
And of course, the question is he a lone wolf? Is he a patsy? Is he, was he coordinating with somebody? Scott McMahon writes, Eagle Ed Martin, you have some explaining to do. When the Steve Baker contrived and factually deficient story about gait analysis by anonymous experts in software broke, you were all over it, acting like you were some mysterious Sherlock Holmes who cracked the case in your trench coat. All your homies in the Flynn cult went ballistic, calling you a hero, claiming you, Baker, and Seraphin had done what Trump and Cash had failed to do, and it was all used to incite TDS among Trump's supporters. Now, I did talk about this as well. It was a big story when it broke, and it was the closest thing we had to a lead. And I thought that it was pretty good information. And we were wondering what happened, why the story got buried. Well, maybe, think about it this way. If that story, when it came out, that story put so much pressure on the FBI, because now they have to act, they have to answer, they have to make their case, because now you have an investigative journalist doing the work that they should be doing. And I'm betting it put an immense amount of pressure on them to actually kickstart that investigation, which brings us to today. Julie Kelly, 10 hours ago, she says just yesterday, Steve Baker, who wrongly claimed a female police officer set the devices, blamed the FBI for his failure to provide any more meaningful updates to his gait analysis story. And that is the tweet you just heard, the Steve Baker tweet you heard Tim Pool just recite. One thing we know for sure is that this has to be the guy, says Amy R. I mean, the FBI wouldn't arrest an innocent person, right? I feel like this is going to get messy. She still believes Steve Baker has it right. Nick Sortor, the FBI massive presence outside the home of the alleged pipe bomber. Here he is driving up to the scene.
The Caesar squad has confirmed the address. News crews starting to show up. Caesar squad has confirmed.
And you can see that the whole entire street blocked off by police cruisers. Nick Sortor heading to that location to check it out personally. Now, Patrick Abbott writes, for an anarchist accused, January 6th pipe bomber Brian Cole lives in a pretty nice home, but revolution is a rich person's game. Well, to be clear, he lived with his parents, and his parents, bail bondsmen working to, I guess, free immigration people, lived in this home right here. 9 hours ago, let's take a look here. the way the case was cracked. Johnny St. Pete writes, about 6 weeks ago, was Dan Bongino the lead on it? Patel decided to take the old agents off the case, put a new team on it. John Solomon, Brian Cole has been identified. Let's listen to John Solomon's take.
Now, there was a little resistance. Mentioned, I think it was just before Thanksgiving on your show, I thought there would be an arrest this week. They were zeroing in on a gentleman whom they arrested this morning in Northern Virginia. And the way this case was cracked was about a month or 6 weeks ago. Bongino, who was the lead on it, and Patel decided to take the old agents off the case and put a new team on it. Now, there was a little resistance, as there always is in the FBI, to any form of change. But the new team came in. They applied some new ideas, some new technologies, and some of the evidence that was sitting right in front of them with fresh eyes was followed, and it was able to be led to this gentleman who they arrested a little bit ago. We don't know much about his ideology or his intentions or his motives yet. And one of the things that FBI officials stressed with me this morning is that this is really the beginning. The arrest is the beginning of trying to understand how this operation was conducted, who's behind it, whether there are more conspirators or whether this is a lone wolf. Still all of that to be determined, but a really extraordinary effort. Almost 5 years later, with a fresh set of eyes and a different approach, the FBI that couldn't solve the case for 4.5 years solves it. Very much like the way the Charlie Kirk investigation occurred in the first few hours. There were a lot of FBI agents in old guard that didn't want to put the suspect's photo out, but Kash Patel and Bongino insisted that was going to be key to getting the father to flip, and they put the photo out, the father flips, and of course you get that arrest as we see. What you're seeing is a different mentality in the FBI, and that plays out in two different ways. First, you see successes that we haven't seen in a while, lots of arrests, cases solved that had not been solved for a long time, other cases which could have gone on for months being solved in 33 hours like Charlie Kirk's assassin. The second part is it results in a lot of whining from FBI people who think they know what's better. And you see that even in the Miranda Devine story earlier this week. You've got these grousers and grouchers because the truth of the matter is Donald Trump ordered Patel and Bongino to break glass at the FBI. They broke glass. And now the FBI is doing things differently. They're succeeding, but there are people who want to focus on the whining and crying, not actually the success of what the FBI has been doing. The way they solved this case was fresh thinking.
Here's what kind of strange credulity. In 5.5 years, and Dan comes in with Kash, but Dan finally gets tired of it, puts on a new team. Yep. And I understand it's a fresh set of eyes, a different perspective. But it doesn't strain credulity to think that the original FBI team was really, and this is the problem with all of J6. Were they part of the problem? Because, to say that Bongino and these guys came in and in 6 weeks cracked the case is fantastic. But you sit there and go, particularly you see a lot of these former whistleblowers of people trashing Kash every day. Yeah. Is the building just still adamantly opposed to Kash, Bongino, and President Trump?
Fewer and fewer people are opposed. There are even people that were opposed at the beginning, like this guy's just a talking head. He's not an FBI agent. And then you start solving cases, and people are like, oh, damn, hey, this is working. We're getting bad guys off the street. So there are 2 or 3 dynamics going on in the Bureau. The first is there are people that are still the deep state, and as Kash Patel and Dan Bongino find them, they throw them out, or they twist them in a way that they're required to show us what the deep state did the last 6 or 8 years that we didn't know about. Early on, there was some question. Why was Kash Patel keeping certain people behind? Because those people wanted to keep their pension, and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino wanted to know what really went on, and they squeezed those people to find out what the dirty secrets were that existed from the Wray and Comey era, and that's how they found the burn bags, and they found all that stuff. So you have resistance. That resistance is growing less. The resistors now move to the outside. This report that, I think Miranda writes in the New York Post, it's an anonymous whistleblower report. It's kind of weird to have a study that doesn't have any names to it. But a lot of those people are gone, and they're grousing from the outside.
Brian Cole, a suspect arrested in connection with the pipe bomb J6 investigation, lists a very particular and peculiar set of skills on his LinkedIn profile. Skip tracing, fraud, private investigations, security management, physical security, surveillance, security operations, 30 bonds, criminal law, background checks, internal investigations, enforcement investigation, executive protection. Sounds like a typical list and skill set that you might find for somebody in the bail bond family. So the information is all coming out now. So here's the problem, okay, and the bottom line. Either Steve Baker at Blaze Media got it catastrophically wrong and a female Capitol Police officer was falsely accused, or the FBI just arrested a patsy to bury the real story before it exploded. Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel say they cracked this case by simply re-examining old evidence. But the timing, weeks after Baker's bombshell, has skeptics asking some hard questions. The MAGA insurrection narrative is bleeding out either way. The only question is whether justice was actually served or whether we just watched the cover-up enter an entirely new phase. Now, the story is far from over. For 5 years, the pipe bomber was used to justify a war on the American people. Then Steve Baker named a Capitol Police officer as the suspect. Now the FBI arrests someone else entirely, an anarchist, Antifa, from the suburbs, and expects you to close the books. Some are celebrating, others are screaming patsy. So here's what we know for certain. The evidence didn't change. Only the people looking at it did. Brian Cole Jr. may be guilty, or he may be the fall guy designed to protect someone far more connected. The next few weeks will tell us which. But one thing is clear, the January 6th narrative the regime built its power on is crumbling, and they're desperate to control how it falls. My question for you, do you believe that Brian Cole Jr. is the real J6 pipe bomber? Yes or no? Sound off in the comments. You can gear up also at the Next News merch shop. You'll find it linked in the description.